Anything else you kind of remember? So you went away to work for a bit of time and then came back to the county.
Oh yeah, well, as I said before, I don't think I was really cut out to be a farmer.
It's the cow thing.
Yeah, no, but father was a farmer, and that was it. I mean, just that's the only thing he was ever interested in, was a farm. And mother had a devil of a time dragging him away from a cow to go on a vacation or anything. So that was his life. He bought a farm for Gary, and he bought a farm for Ray. Fred and Richard, they stayed on the farm. He offered to buy me a farm, and I said no. I said I'm not cut out to be a farmer, so I didn't take him up on that. And but anyway, I took off and I went to Kitchener. A good friend of mine, David Dick, he was working up there, so he got me a job working in a chrome plating plastics of all things, you know. And here I am chrome plating plastics for the push buttons for the Philco radios for your car and stuff like that. It was a new thing. So, but anyway, because see, I was brilliant back then, you see, so I knew everything.
I think you still are.
Yeah, and so life was good, right? So I went up there and worked for a while and decided that, you know, maybe I wasn't quite as smart as I thought I was. So I came back home and actually moved back home and finished up grade 13 and then went on from there. Yeah, I've done all kinds of crazy stuff. You know, I lived in the States for a while. I worked for Paiseki Aircraft. Yeah, I took drafting and all of those courses when I was in high school, and I really loved drafting. So that's what I was doing. I was down in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I was working on projects for Vietnam. That was in 60, 68, 69, and it was a very interesting time. And I began to understand why, after that Vietnam War, that the kids and the young people, you know, they rebelled, you know, because Paul Devish, he became a very good friend of mine. He did the NOM twice, and his attitude was that when he come back, he says, "Ain't nobody ever going to tell me what to do again," because when you're in those situations, when they say go, you go. And you know, he witnessed, you know, his friends, you know, getting killed. And so he said on the way back, he landed in Greenland. That's the great air traffic through there. And he said he got off the plane and kissed the ground. So that was quite an experience. But I was there just because Paiseki he bought the airport out there and was going to turn that into a big a place where we're going to build helicopters and all that kind of stuff. But
was that in Scranton still?
No, we're here in Pittsburgh Heights. Yeah, where base 31 is now.
Right.
Yeah, he bought that, but he never got the contract, so that kind of went through. So that's why I went down and worked in the States for a little while. So then I came back home, and I don't know, I was fancy free. I was going to, you know, become a vagabond and travel the world. And then all of a sudden I read in the paper where, hey, you want to go back to school? We'll pay you. I thought, well, that's a pretty good idea, right? You know, but what is it? We have to work with developmentally handicapped. And I thought to myself, whoa, you know, do I want to do that? You know, because people don't understand them, and they still don't. And so, but anyway, I thought, hey, why not, right? So I answered the call, and I got picked in the second group, and away I went. So you went to school for 3 months, and then you worked for 3 months, and I worked on the wards with severely developmentally handicapped children. and it was quite an experience.
And how long did you do that for?
I did that for 28 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I retired from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was great. I loved it. 18. No, not 28 years. 18 years.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute.
Still a long time.
Yeah, it was a long time anyway. So, it was interesting because when I graduated, I got placed on an all-girls ward, and I don't know, being a guy, you got to get used to this, right? Because I'll tell you this story, but the one girl, she was about 21, 22 years old. And but she was operating on about a 3-4-year-old level, and she was a very well developed girl. So the thing is there that you bathe these people. So some of them are kind of okay or whatever, right? So I bathe them away and I look around and go, holy mackerel! I mean, you have to adjust. Oh. But you get used to it after a while, because that's where they're operating, that's where they are. And then I left that and left the areas and went over or left the wards and worked in the areas and worked with higher functioning people. They could clothe themselves, bathe themselves, and those kinds of things. So. You got their meals ready, you helped them get their meals ready and those kinds of things. But in the meantime, they came along and they said, well, if you want to go back to school, we'll pay for your schooling if you pass. And I thought, hey, that's a good idea. So I said, sounds good to me. So I ended up going to night school for about 10 years. Right, and got my rehab papers and vocational papers and management courses and stuff like that. But it did me well because it all worked out in the end. I went to the workshop and worked my way up through there, became the manager, and then I've always been a little bit of a nerd. So in between, I was taking computer courses. And back in the day when the old what are they? The Radio Shack. You did your own programming and everything. It was kind of fun, and all that kind of stuff. So I did that, and we run the workshop. But I did an interview on 99.3 on this, and. I'm very, very proud of what Principal Heights did and what all of the people out there that worked, what they did for these. I have the habit of saying for the kids, but I guess I just look at it that way, because it was a tremendously wonderful place. They had their own homes. They had their own friends. We had a school. We had a church. We had recreation, we had vocational services, and we did a lot of good things, because I went out and we picked apples and cherries and tomatoes, those kinds of things we did in the wintertime. We cleaned up all the Main Street, for the businesses there. And we even had a housekeeping group. But that all goes back to my staff. I just give them all the credit in the world because I was so blessed. Every morning I said, hey, I want you to know you're making me look good. And so, so it all worked out really nice. And
so that's probably the highlight of your life working there. Is that what you'd say?
Oh, absolutely. I would have never left there, but we got to the point where they wanted to shut down institutions, and so on and so forth. So I was in management at that particular point in time, and so they come along with that what they call the 80 factor. And so your age plus the number of years that you worked, if it added up to 80, you're gone. You know.
You had to go or you could go?
Well, I'll back up a little bit, because before I did that, I took a secondment and I worked over at Sir James Whitney as a redeployment officer. And that was working with people that were losing their jobs, and you know, did you just want to buy out, or did you want to go back and get more education, or did you want to get put here or put there? And I think when I think back on that, that was probably the hardest job I ever had. You know, I mean, with single mothers coming in there, and you know, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? You know, that kind of thing. So, but I had just a wonderful, wonderful boss, Victoria Sanoski. You know, and I've had terrific women bosses. I have, yeah. And so that was, yeah. So anyway, I knew the rules, and so when they came back and they said, well, okay, fine, you're done, and I said, no, I'm not done. I said, there's a job over there, and I qualify for that. So. I finished off my career as a midnight supervisor. I'd go into work at 8 o'clock and work until 8 o'clock in the morning. But you were in charge of everything, the whole facility, the group homes, family homes. If anything went wrong, you were the man. And so you had to, you know, report those kinds of things, yeah. Because I can back up a little bit too, because at one particular point in time, I looked after all of the family homes and all the group homes. It kind of got mixed up a little bit, so they came to me and said, you know, you're a county boy and you know everybody. Yep.
And this is while you were on the Hill?
Yeah, this is all up on the Hill. Yeah. I'm a type B personality or whatever. Like, I spent most of my life just going in and putting Humpty Dumpty back together again, but as soon as it got back together again, I wanted out. You know, to do something else.
You were looking for the next challenge.
Yeah, something like that, you know. I don't know, I just crazy. Yeah. And then go back and right, in my smart days, right, and then of course now I was a little bit smarter, right? So I wrote a little memoir of myself here about a year ago, right? And the funny part is that, you know, later on, I went back to Loyalist College and I actually taught. I taught introduction to computers to the folks that were coming into the DSW program, developmental service program. But see, when I took it, it was the mental retardation certificate, right?
Yeah.
Can't say that anymore,
Thankfully.
right? Yeah. Bob Sharp, he was the principal of the school over there, and he had a little plaque on it, and it says, "Label jars, not people." Yeah, I never forgot that. So those are just the crazy little things that I've done in my life.